Hi everybody, in this video we will speak about the nose. Here you have different examples of different artists, there is Velázquez, Rembrandt, Van Dyck, Bouguereau, Madrazo, Repin and some other artists, okay? First thing is very important to understand that the nose will be, we need to choose the ideas of the nose based on the visual impression that we see and the abstract shapes and the construction and the forms. For this reason, knowing the different parts and planes of the nose, it will help a lot when we are drawing. Here you have those examples, and then we can see the same examples, but just being focused on nose. I think it's very interesting. Go and analyze how different artists solve that problem, okay? Because in that way we can get lots of angles, okay? How great masters were making their work. We will do this with nose and then we will do with eye in the future, okay, and will be very nice, okay. In any case, one of the things that we can see is that the general values on the nose are pretty flat. Then there are some highlights. This one from Madrazo we can see a very separated plane, okay, but most of them is a very flat value with then a highlight. Most of people normally have the tendency to exaggerate the change of plane because when we do that, it's because we see very strong the simultaneous contrast that produce the highlight. Here we have some other examples of Sargent, and here we can see the same thing. Values are very flat, there are the highlights where there is a structure. Here we can see very nice change of temperature from red to more gray, okay? But in general are pretty flat. In that one also we can see little bit of change of tone, but if you can see this with that are more or less the same value. It's more that idea of the highlight that produce that simultaneous contrast that produce the separation, okay? It's also very important in painting, taking care about transitions, okay? This is very nice, it's very flat. And then I make a selection of portraits of Ramon Casas to see how he was solving that. Here the images are not super great resolution, but again you can see that there is not too much variation on the halftones. We can see very compressed. Why? Because that plane is facing the light and that plane is also facing the light. Here we can see that he always used that highlight on the point, and here I thought it was very interesting just take off the highlight to see how then just adding the highlight we get that 3D idea, okay? It's very nice to see the general selection and how he is solving it. In those images you can see the idea of the simultaneous contrast, and just to remember that sometimes we see values darker because they are around light values, or we can see values lighter because they are around the opposite, okay? And this is crazy, and if you don't see with those images, sometimes it's difficult to believe it, okay? Here I start to make some selection of diagrams from different artists, just to show that since the past lots of artists were working already to show the different forms that they were looking for. This is Bridgman, very useful. In general, the nose is built by, we have the bone, we have the bridge, that is part of the bone and part of the cartilage, and we have the ball of the nose. And then we have the nostrils, okay? Those are the simplifications of Bridgman. A common mistake is that sometimes people is just choosing the information visually. If you know that those forms are there, it will be much easier to see them, okay? These are the examples of Bridgman. Here we have examples from Andrew Loomis, okay, and again we can see like the different planes and different ideas, and when we are painting or drawing we need to choose or take care and consider what is going on with the form. This is from Bames, okay, this is more anatomical but also I think is useful to see. This is from Bruce Hogarth. We can see the basic simplification that we have here and then how he can do a little bit more complex, always following the same planes. Maybe different artists consider a little bit different planes, but the general idea is always the same, okay? This is from Michael Hampton. Remember what we were speaking on the classes before about the glabella and how can be a very important point to take care, but we can see also that idea about the basic simplification and how even if the drawing is more complex, is built on top of that big mass, okay? This is from Proco. Again, we have a first simplification, very simple. This is more anatomical and this is more by planes. When we are doing a sketch or more finished portrait, we need to choose if we want to be more impressionistic or we want to be more analytic, but always taking care about what is going on, okay? A very nice book about all these zarins is that Anatomy for Sculptures. And again, we have same simplification, some ideas about how maybe girls have the tendency to not have the nose a little bit higher, boys a little bit lower, but also having that idea about having everything separated by parts. It will be easy because sometimes we start to put things together and it's very important to separate them. Also very important to understand the nose from the bottom view, okay? Because normally we don't consider it. This is more important for sculptures, but I also invite you that at some point you try to sculpt the nose and try to feel and touch those forms, okay? This is an older version of diagrams, but we have the same. This is from Vanderpool. And again, we can see different planes and how he understands perfectly like the 3D forms, okay? Sometimes we could think that something is very abstract, but normally if it's abstract built on top of a solid construction, is much better. And this is from a Russian book. I don't know the name, but as you can see, lots of different artists from different times and different parts of the world have those ideas, and I think you must study this because it's very, very important and I think can take your work on the next level, okay? Finally, this is from Molly Step. I cannot pronounce the name, but this is one of the diagrams that I like more. It's very useful and it shows every single form. In my portraits, I try to have this in mind. If they are fast, maybe I don't show everything, but I have those forms in consideration, okay? Just after seeing all that structure, we can see that, for example, Rembrandt was following that structure. We can see that that highlight goes with that change of plane. Here we have a plane. That highlight shows the change of plane here. Maybe those forms are a little bit less described, but this is from Rembrandt and we have one note here that shows a more upper plane and then how it changes. And highlights are very specific in a point where the structure is changing. Again, this is Rembrandt and maybe this is more impressionistic. We can see more subtleties on the subforms, okay? But remember that all those areas are very compressed in value. The same happens with Sargent and with Ramon Casas. Here I just took one of the portraits that we had before to just analyze a little bit deeper. We have the basic simplification with the center line, the glabella. I was trying to find very fast like different 3D forms to understand why the halftones had the direction that they had, okay? It's very useful to see also the portrait with a similar light with that simplification and this other one. And here is just when we paint, sometimes we get a little bit crazy, but I think this is a very easy solution, okay? We have like our shadow shape, very simple. We have a general tone. Then we can just add a transition, if you can see before and later. Very simple. Next step will be like just model or build some structure on the halftones, but very easy, okay? But there is not a crazy range variation, still very flat. And then some highlights. And I think this is a very nice way if we want to work fast, okay? Different artists have different solutions, but I just show you what is kind of working for me. Then I just want to show you a very a simple like portrait. I did in 10 minutes. I go a little bit faster, but you can see how we will like the big shape, very simple. There is just one basic note here. Normally people is taking sometimes some directions very strong, but I don't think it's a very good idea because the general form is more simple, okay? And then from here we can just keep continuing. In another video we will speak why the eyes are like that, okay? And look like how here now I start to articulate a little bit the nose based on the planes that I know, okay? I can go a little bit farther, then I can put just 3 highlights, one of the ball, one of the bridge, and one higher, okay? And then just model and find some basic planes. This is a 10 minutes sketch, just to show you that, okay? I also want to show in this way how I can take one line here, the same line here, and the same line here. And like that with all the process, one, and one. Like that you can see that the way how I was selecting before the information was actually thinking a lot about what I wanted. For me, every line is important. Sometimes I just put lines to place something, okay? But then when I am articulating things, I really need to know every single break, what it means and with which form is connected, okay? This goes like that, and then yeah, a little bit faster, and you can see like the shapes are always the same, and then some of the highlights. I also want to show you in general, if we are gonna simplify this, the basic simplification will be the one that I am showing you now, okay? That have a little bit of thickness. Some people have the tendency to make that point, but if we put that point here, what happens if we don't have the thickness to have the form of the nose and the cast shadow, which means that in general, don't translate this as a point, okay? Always it will be a little bit of thickness, because there is something between these two lines and we need that thickness, okay? Just going with what we were speaking before, that forgotten space that we were speaking in some videos before is very important to consider. I just did here a very fast remind about that to see in different cases where we want to look for, okay? Because that distance is almost always the same, okay? And it will help to see the length of the nose. In general, people make that a little bit longer, okay? And just checking that space makes our life much easier, and your nose will have a better size, okay? For sure, we could then consider and relate the nose with other parts, okay? But please don't forget to check that space. This is one of the relationships more important for me. For portraits, I really invite you to look for it, okay? As you can see in all the portraits, is almost the same, okay? 1 and 2 and then 3, and just see these spaces that are very easy to see. Then finally, I want to show you also a couple, 3 words that I did before, okay? First one is that, as you can see, maybe there are not all the specific planes, but there is that idea of having this very simple. This I don't remember, maybe is 1.5 hour sketch or something like that, but having those planes a little bit described, and then with some highlights, we have that general idea. Of course, this is not a finished portrait with all the render and the super design, but as a sketch, I think it works pretty good, okay? Here we have another 3 hours sketch from life. We have the same frontal plane, lateral plane from the ball of the nose. Then this is the transition with the nostril, then that plane. It's pretty easy, okay? Finally, I wanted to show you this one, because remember that we want to start very simple, okay? And go gradually to being more specific. This is a way of starting. Sometimes I like to start with more free brush strokes or shapes, okay? But if we start on portraiture, I would recommend having a nice control of the drawing we don't have to put extra things like the value, and just controlling the edges and the design of our shapes and trying to follow the forms, we can get something that works pretty okay? And then of course we can add the values. And finally, I want to share with you the bibliography for all the diagrams that I show you in that video that were not mine, and you can look for the artists on the book or the books that I just show you, and I invite you to investigate more. Thank you very much.